There are 10,580 common cards in Magic the Gathering, and I don't just know that off the top of my head. It's on the screen right there. Actually, that's wrong because it's what's legal in Pauper, not what is actually how many commons there are. There's a whole ban list and everything. I made a video on it. It was not a great video, but a lot of people watched it. Anyway, this is Common Knowledge, where I'm going to take a look at 10 of these common Pauper legal Magic the Gathering cards, and I'm going to tell you, are they any good in that format itself? Which is Pauper, if you haven't caught that. Let's see what our first card is and see if it's any good. It's Natural Obsolescence, which is 1 and a green for an instant. Put target artifact on the bottom of its owner's library. Whew, that's not good, is it? That's very specific. Which I guess made a little bit more sense in Aether Revolt, but it's extremely specific. Putting it on the bottom of its owner's library is not great for you, I guess, if you want to get one of those artifacts that you put in your graveyard back. You know, going to the bottom of your library, you got to do some real shenanigans to get that back to the top of your library or into your hand, finding some kind of tutor for it. Yeah, it's possible, but, not hugely great. This, I imagine, in Pauper would probably be used more to put an artifact from your opponent's graveyard into the bottom of their library, if they were, in response to them trying to get it back, reanimate it somehow. And the question is, how many artifacts in the Pauper format are scary enough when your opponent reanimates them that you'd want to play a card like this? And honestly, I'm really struggling. I'm really struggling to think of what I would put there. Because what are your options here? Let's see. We've artifacts that you might want to get back from the graveyard. You could argue for something like the a Relic of Progenitus. Jeez, words. But the problem is that thing exiles itself, right? It doesn't just sacrifice itself. It exiles itself when you do that. See, exile a Relic of Progenitus. So, this is not showing up in a graveyard to be grabbed back unless it gets milled there or discarded there. And, I guess they could try to get it back then, but I don't know. How much do you care at that point? If you weren't thinking of the Relic of Progenitus, you could go the Tormod's Crypt. So Tormod's Crypt does sacrifice itself. So if somebody was trying to get this back with like a Leon and Squire that can grab a 1 mana or less artifact. Is it 1 mana or less? Actually, let's check that out too. I want to make sure I'm saying the right things here. Yeah, 1 mana cost or less from your graveyard to your hand. So, this is the kind of card you're responding to with planned obsolescence or natural obsolescence. To be able to stop Leon and Squire from grabbing that 1 mana artifact back. But, Neil Spellbombs, I guess, all of these are also graveyard hate pieces that I'm talking about. Like, what are the pieces that you really care about getting that are part of their engines? I don't know, like a Blood Crypt, maybe, because that's reanimating other things. It just, I don't think any of these things are that strong. You want to be able to exile a card from a graveyard, or in this case, I guess, put it on the bottom of its owner's library if somebody's trying to do like a Lotleth Giant, like they're trying to do the dredge thing and bring in a big Lotleth Giant, and then you can say, nope, that goes back onto your deck. But this can't do that because this has to be an artifact. I don't know. I don't know where you go with this. I think it's just too narrow. And while it's probably fine for what it does, it is so narrow that I think we can't give this anything more than a 1.2, I guess. Where do you play it? Nowhere, right? Maybe Aether Revolt Limited, but even then, I don't know. I think that's a pretty bad card. Maybe our next card will be a little bit better, but first it has to load. What do we got? It's Injector Crocodile, 4 and double black for a 5/5 Phyrexian Crocodile. When this creature dies, you incubate 3, which means you create an incubator token with 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and you can pay 2 to transform this token, and it transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. Ooh. It also has swamp cycling for 2, so you can discard it, search your library for a swamp, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle. 6 mana for a 5/5. Not great. It does have the swamp cycling, though. We've seen these land cyclers do good work. Problem is, we've mentioned this before, Lord of the Rings land cyclers have just been better than all the other ones because they land cycle for a single mana instead of 2 mana like this guy does. And so you always play those. Troll of Khazad-dûm is just 1,000 times better than Injector Crocodile. It's the way it is. And until it gets banned out of the format, and I don't think it will, all 5 of those cyclers, I think they're here to stay, and I think a card like Injector Crocodile will never be here to stay. Now, it does have a Dies trigger, so you are getting a 5/5 that also can eventually turn into a 3/3, so you are getting some extra value off of it. That's okay. You know, the Incubator token is an artifact, so you are getting an artifact on the board. I guess that can be useful. Maybe it's something that you swamp cycle early in the game and then you reanimate later in the game. Okay. I mean, it's a 5/5. It does go head to head with a Tolarian Terror. Okay. But I think overall you're going to be disappointed that this is the one that you have instead of the myriad of other creatures that are available to you that you can reanimate. And so this is just not there. Play Troll Khazad-dûm instead. It's just better. We'll go with a 2 point. I'll give it a 2.6. It's a little bit better than the average Magic card, but the opportunity cost of playing this over Troll of Khazad-dûm is crazy. Don't do that. Don't do that. Our next card, Contaminated Aquifer. We have done these lands before. These are very good lands, the Dominaria United dual lands that come in tapped but have the land types on them. We see these get used a lot, hey, especially if you're land cycling like this. You can use your swamp cycling creature to go and grab this island swamp and put it onto the battlefield. These are only slightly eclipsed, maybe. You can make the determination. I think they are slightly eclipsed by the Kaldheim tapped lands that are snow dual lands that have the land types as well. Having snow matters very slightly to a couple of decks, mostly the red decks that use Skred. If you're not playing Skred, if you're not playing red, then I don't think you really need to worry too much about using those. And these are cheaper. The other ones are not that expensive either, but these are just a little bit cheaper. They're a little bit more plentiful, and some of them even got the Final Fantasy treatment. Look at that. These are good lands, but we've seen them before. I'm not going to do them again, but you should probably play these. They're pretty darn good. The real next card, or real third card of the day, is Crackling Cyclops. For 2 and a red, you get a 0/4 Cyclops Wizard. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. This is very close to good cards. You know good cards, or know good cards from Pauper's past, like Kiln Fiend. Now, the Kiln Fiend is a little bit different, not too much different, but it is. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, this thing gets +3/+0. Pretty similar. You're paying 2 mana for this guy. Paying 3 mana for this guy, which doesn't sound hugely different, but it really is. It really is, because Kiln Fiend decks want to kill you like on turn 3. Crackling Cyclops is only getting down on turn 3, so it's taking you a whole nother turn to try to kill your opponent. And at that point, they've probably set up a decent amount, or they have more cards available to them, so they found their removal spells. And it makes a card like Crackling Cyclops pretty bad when a card like Kiln Fiend is really good. So it's a tough call. It's a tough call to try to add this to your deck, because I think you are actively making your deck worse at that point. And also, the Kiln Fiend decks, while they were very fun back in the day, and I've seen Kiln Fiend be played. I've seen somebody try to do Kiln Fiend in 2026, and they were successful occasionally, and most of the times they weren't. It's a fun deck, and it's really fun to kill your opponent on turn 3, especially when it's something crazy, a combo like that, and not just burn spell, burn spell, burn spell. I mean, I guess Kiln Fiend is playing burn spell, burn spell, burn spell, but you're killing them with the big creature. That's the cool part. And it's not just, oh, I discarded a card and you deal 2 damage from grab the prize, and then my gutter snipe hit you for 2, and like, okay, yeah, I know, I've seen it a billion times. But that all that aside, we're talking about Crackling Cyclops here, and Crackling Cyclops, I don't think cracks the list when it comes to Pauper playability. We'll give this thing a halfway respectable 3, but nothing more than that. Gloomfang Mauler is 5 in double black for a 5/5 nightmare with swamp cycling too. Hey, stop me if you heard that before. But it also has backup 2. When this creature enters, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following ability until end of turn. And this guy at the very bottom here has Menace. Okay, really good to take a look at this in combination with that Crocodile, which is also from the same set. So we really comparable creatures here. Very similar creatures here. The 5/5s, Swamp Cycle for 2. This thing leaves something when it dies. The other card does something when it enters with the backup. This thing costs 1 less, but also doesn't have Menace. You got to think about all those things. The thing that I think really matters with the Gloomfang is that if you want to, you can put the counters on this guy. This can be a 7-mana 7/7 with Menace. That's on rate. It's not what I necessarily want to play with my 7 mana, but it is on rate. And if you do get a 7/7 with Menace, you can stop a whole lot of your opponent's creatures. You can stop a Cryptic Serpent dead in its tracks. You can stop a Boulder Branch Golem right in its tracks. That's okay. Plus, it has the swamp cycling for early uses. Again, you gotta question: is this better than Troll of Khazad-dûm? And I think the answer is still no. Troll of Khazad-dûm, despite just being a 6/5, has super menace. Like, it can only be blocked by 3 or more creatures. Regular menaces has to be blocked by 2 or more creatures. So you're getting through with your damage more often with Troll of Khazad-dûm, or at the very least, you're killing more creatures from your opponent than you are with Gloomfang Mauler. If Troll was banned out of the format, and again, I don't think it will be. I think those things are here to stay. I think Gloomfang Mauler probably has more of a chance than Injector Crocodile does, but not a whole lot more of a chance, you know. Let's go for... I'm going to give this thing a 3.1. Yeah. I think a 3.1 is just fine for that. And next up, we're playing with Mallfield Twins. We've done this one before. We've absolutely done this one before. It was okay. You know, a 6 mana 4/4 that turns into 2 2/2s. Eventually, I guess that ends up being better than rate, but it does take a bit to get there. So we've done it before. I wasn't too impressed the last time, and I'm still not impressed now. Hungry Spriggan is a great name for a card. It's 2 and a green for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior with Trample, and whenever this creature attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. That's kind of neat. Originally from Shadowmoor, I don't remember this guy. I played during Shadowmoor. I bought packs of Shadowmoor. 3 mana 1/1 sounds pretty bad, but you know, it having Trample naturally and getting +3/+3 whenever it attacks, this thing swings in pretty decently. A 3 mana 4/4. Imagine it that way. A 3 mana 4/4 Trampler. Okay, that's not too bad. You know, this thing wears combat tricks really nicely. This thing wears equipment really nicely and auras quite nicely as well. It is still pretty vulnerable. You know, it only gets the +3/+3 when it attacks, and it only lasts until end of turn. So your opponent has plenty of ways to blast this thing before you attack on a turn, or doing it on their turn when this thing will go back to being a 1/1. So you got to be a little careful with it. You know, this is not going to go in your Bogle's deck, because this thing is extremely vulnerable to any sort of targeted removal, and your Bogles are just better at handling that than this guy is. But the art's great. He's just a mean little guy, and I kind of like it. Yeah, it's not that good though. It's fun. It's fun, but it's not that good, especially when you're paying 3 mana for a 1/1, and then your opponent just takes it out with a single mana. You really kind of feel shafted at that point. And so I just wouldn't play it to begin with. Let's go for a 2.7. Yeah. I think 2.7 is all right because, it has some pretty cool upside. Befriending the Moths is a Kamigawa Neon Dynasty card. 3 and a white for an enchantment saga. As this saga enters, and after your draw step, you add a lore counter to it. On chapters 1 and 2, you get target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. I don't hate that. And on turn 3, or chapter 3 rather, you exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control, and it transforms into Imperial Moth, which is a 2/4 enchantment creature insect with flying. Is this good? Not particularly. 4 mana, and on the first turn here, you get +1/+1 and flying, and your opponent has a chance to take out whatever creature you're going to target. It's not great. And then your opponent gets a whole turn to potentially destroy all your creatures, so the next turn that this comes up, and it happens at your draw step, so unless you've got a creature with flash or something that you've put down, you probably don't have another creature out at that point, so then it kind of wastes chapter 2. And then chapter 3, eventually, you paid 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer. I don't love it. I don't think this is good enough value. Paying... you could argue, hey, I'm paying 4 mana to get +1/+1 on turn on chapter 1, another +1/+1 on chapter 2, and then I get a 2/4 flyer on chapter 4. So I am getting 4/6 of stats, 4/6 and flying of stats for 4 mana. Maybe that's interesting to you. I don't think that's particularly interesting to me. I'm a Kamigawa stan over here, but I don't think I can do it for this card. It's fine. It's fine. I generally do like sagas and the turn over turn value that you get with them, but it's really tough to justify when they do this little. And I have no idea what deck you'd put it in. You're not putting it in Bogles. You're not putting it in mono. You could put it in mono white heroic, I guess, but that, like, the heroic creatures, they need to be targeted with spells, right? I don't know if it works with abilities. I don't play a lot of heroic. I've had heroic played against me, but I have never played heroic myself. Whenever you cast a spell, yeah. So it's all casting spells that target your guys. So this doesn't even work with heroic stuff. So if it can't do that, it really has no place. You put this in mono white weenie? No, absolutely not. You very much do not do that. This costs too much and doesn't do, giving one of your creatures flying. I guess if it was like Leonardo, Big Brother, like, okay, giving it flying's not as bad, but yeah, I think this is a pretty bad card, all things considered. I'm going to give this thing I think I'll give it a straight up 2. You could argue for lower. I would listen to that argument, but I'm going to give it a 2. Ostiary Thrall is from Guild Pact. Hey, that's a set I really like. Likes a strong. I have a lot of nostalgia for Guild Pact. I don't know how much I like Guild Pact, but it did bring Orzhov into being, so I like it for that. 3 and a black for a 2/2 Thrall creature. You can pay a white and tap it to tap target creature. It's a tapper. Hey, we haven't got to talk about a tapper for a while. I like tappers. I'd like them to be a little better than this, though. A 4 mana tapper, especially when it costs a second color of mana here. So you have to be playing something Orzhov related here to get the effect. A 4 mana 2/2 is bad. Paying 4 mana to get the 2/2, and it continues to have to pay every turn to be able to tap the creature. I really don't like that. I think if you're doing that much, you have to be able to tap target permanent or something. I want to be able to tap lands. If I'm paying this much for a guy like this, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't have a deck for it. It's a bad card, really bad card, and we'll give this thing a 1.7. I think Whew, get it off my screen. Mana Leak. Have we done Mana Leak on the channel? I feel like we have, but you know what? I feel like talking about Mana Leak. It's a good card. Mana Leak is 1 and a blue for an instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 mana. That's a good amount of mana. Early in the game, this is basically just counterspell that's a little easier to cast, and that's great. that's super great. We've definitely done this card before because I'm about to make the same argument I made before as well. Like, this should be one of those Pauper staple counterspells. Think about the Pauper counterspells that get played right now. You have counterspell, actual factual counterspell. Then you have a bunch of 1 mana options that will kind of get the job done. Things like Abjure and things like Spell Pierce. Those all kind of play in this mode. And those cards, Spell Pierce specifically is a card that goes, hey, I'm playing a counterspell. I'm really good in the early game because they won't have the mana to pay. But, in the later game, they probably will have the mana to pay. So it becomes a lot less useful. But then you're getting more counterspells that are very specific. You're getting your dispels that can stop instants. You're getting your envelops that can stop sorceries. You're getting your essence scatters and your remove souls that can stop creatures. And even those don't get played all that much. But the counterspells that you're seeing outside of counterspell do end up being more specific, or I guess in Abjure's case, specific in that you need to have a blue permanent to... Is it blue permanent or blue creature? Either way, doesn't really matter. You have to have something to sacrifice to Abjure to be able to make it work. I like Mana Leak. I think this is a good card. It's crazy that we're in a format that says 2 mana counterspells might be a little too expensive. And, some people are arguing you don't even have to play Counterspell in your decks because it's too slow. Too slow? It's 2 mana. What do you mean? So I love Mana Leak. This has been a menace card in many formats. And in fact, the closest thing we got to a new Mana Leak was No More Lies in Karlov Manor here. And that's basically a Mana Leak, but you have to pay 2 different colors of mana to be able to do it. And it gets a little better in that it exiles the spell instead of just putting it in the graveyard. But like that was, we've all got really excited when No More Lies came into to play. Not for Pauper, obviously, because it's an uncommon, but for Standard, we're like, whoa, Mana Leak's back in. But it has to be in a very specific deck. It has to be in Azoria stuff. And Mana Leak, the part of the reason Mana Leak's so good is that it's so splashable. And God, we're just in a format that doesn't care about Mana Leak as much anymore. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's a ridiculous thing. I love Mana Leak. I got to give it a good score. While it doesn't see much Pauper play from the results that I've seen, I truly can't give this anything less than a 5.8. I think you can make an argument that it's the second best counterspell in the format. I don't think a lot of people would listen to that argument. I would. I'd listen to that argument. Let me know. What are you rank some counterspells in the format, and let me know where you put Mana Leak in that list, because I think it's pretty darn good. All right, we got one more card to go. It is Conduit Pylons. Hey, here we go. Here's a Pauper playable card. It's a land that's a desert, and when this land enters, you surveil 1. It taps for colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So it filters, but it also surveils when it comes into play. We like that. I played this in my Dredge deck. It does see a lot of play in Dredge stuff. This also sees some play in Tron decks, Monster Tron decks, and other kind of Tron decks, in that it is a way to filter mana, and Tron is always looking for ways of filtering mana. But it also does give you a little bit of card selection with the Surveil, which can be nice in those decks as well. That's looking for, they're about to play for the Monster Tron, especially. You're about to play your big Golem guy, And, what cascades off the top. If you have an idea of what can cascade, or at least what you don't want it to cascade into, then Conduit Pylons is pretty good for that. Now, it's a land that is not a Tron land in a Tron deck, so you don't want to play a bunch of copies of it, but, 1 or 2 copies in that deck isn't hated. I would say any deck where you can make lots of mana and need to filter it, this is a good card for it. But also just, graveyard strategies are generally like a card that just surveils when it comes into play for free. It's a free surveil. This thing comes into play untapped. You got to think about that as well. It is a desert, if that matters to you. There's not a whole lot of reasons for that to matter to you in Pauper, but, it is something to consider, I suppose. I like it. There's also another card that's exactly like it that was from Bloomburrow, right? Isn't that Crystal Grotto? It's not Crystal Groot. I know that. Crystal Grotto. This Scry. It's not Crystal Grotto. What am I thinking of? And this also isn't from Bloomburrow. I gotta know now. Sorry. Got to know. We'll know it's a land. And it's from Bloomburrow. That's probably enough to find it. Hidden Grotto. So close. But yes, this also does the exact same thing. When it enters, you surveil, taps for colorless, and filters. So I like the art on Hidden Grotto a little bit better than Conduit Pylons, but Conduit Pylons being a desert, that can be, potentially useful. These are good. This is just a good land. I'm going to give it a good score. I'm going to give this thing a 6.3. Good land. Usable land. I should probably put a copy in my Tron deck just to have it. Yeah, I probably should. Let's do a bonus card and call it a day. It's Echoing Courage, 1 and a green for an instant. Target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature get +2/+2 until end of turn, originally from Darksteel. This is fine. 2 mana for +2/+2 of stats. Not great. But if you are in a format, or sorry, not a format, if you have a deck that plays a lot of tokens that all have the same name, they're all Saprolines, or they're all soldiers, or they're all birds or something. Okay. Now they're all getting +2/+2. If you're playing a deck that, is just playing 4 Novice Inspectors or something, now they're all getting a little bit of a boost. That's pretty nice. You don't mind that either. But I think token strategies really are the way to go here, because outside of that, you're only getting 4 creatures at the max, right? That can potentially get this, unless I guess you do a threaten effect on one of your opponent's creatures if they're playing the same in the mirror, so you're grabbing one of their guys. Okay, now you can have 5. You're not doing that. That's way too much mana and way too many hoops to jump through. Yeah, a token strategy could be kind of cool, but, not giving trample or not giving any sort of evasion, it is, at its worst, at its floor, this gives 1 creature of yours +2/+2 for 2 mana. And at that point, you really should have played the Giant Growth. If you can get multiple creatures, especially as like tokens that you can make 4, 5, 6, 7 of, and now you're putting +2/+2 on all of them, okay, you can have more of a conversation. Actually, you know what? Well, this is a pointless argument because you're already making infinite of them. But you can, if you play Golem Foundry, and you have the combo going on that allows you to just keep casting artifacts and getting enough charge counters on this that you're then removing and making a bunch of 3/3 golems. Well, sure, you can give all those golems +2/+2, but at that point, if you can make infinite golems, then what do you need? What do you need that for? There's also another one that you can do with elves. I forgot what the combo is. I just saw somebody else do it, but you can keep making 1/1 elves, and okay, if you make infinite 1/1 elves, you don't really need Echoing Courage. And that's kind of the rub. This only works in a very sweet spot of I can only do this a limited number of times, but I still have a bunch of guys, and the bunch of guys has to be over 4, because if it was just 4, you could play it on normal cards, and I don't know. It doesn't have a whole lot of value there either. Yeah, this is narrow enough that I think you give it. I'll be real generous and give this thing a 2, but it probably deserves less than that. I think this is generally a dead card in your deck most of the time. Yeah, makes me sad because I like Darksteel. I remember playing this card, in high school on, cafeteria tables, but not a particularly great card. That's it for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.